My name is Danielle Rhodes, and I'm 47 years old. I never thought I'd be standing in the lobby of my family's hotel, the one I rescued from the edge of bankruptcy, watching my younger brother be handed the title I'd earned. "What do you mean Cameron will be CEO?" I asked, my voice echoing through the newly renovated lobby of Sierra Crest Inn. The clean lines, modern mountain decor, and locally sourced art that surrounded us. I'd personally overseen every detail. I'd saved this place. But my mother just smiled gently and waved me off like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "Danielle, sweetheart," she said, "your brother has a more natural leadership presence. You're too detail-oriented. You'll be perfect handling operations." Before I could respond, Cameron walked in, hands in his pockets, smug as ever. That smirk, the same one he wore every time he got away with something as a kid, spread across his face. "Hey, sis, don't take it personally," he said casually. "Someone's got to focus on the big picture while you handle the small stuff." That was the moment it hit me. They'd never truly seen me, not for who I was or what I'd done. I wasn't just being passed over. I was being erased. 8 months earlier, my father had called me in tears. He said the inn, the family legacy, was weeks away from shutting down. Years of mismanagement, neglect, and zero marketing had left Sierra Crest a ghost of its former self. I didn't hesitate. I sold my condo in Seattle, walked away from a well-paying regional director role at a hotel chain, and came home to Lake Tahoe. My savings went straight into reviving Sierra Crest. The place was frozen in time. Ugly mauve carpeting, a front desk computer from 2006, and online reviews that called it quaint, if you like broken heaters. I didn't sleep for weeks. I overhauled the booking system, negotiated with vendors, trained staff, and updated the rooms. I even used my industry contacts to get us featured in a travel magazine's Hidden Gems list. And it worked. Our occupancy rates doubled. Our online ratings jumped from 2.3 to 4.5 stars in under 5 months. For the first time in a decade, Sierra Crest was turning a real profit. But apparently, that wasn't enough to earn me the job I had already been doing in everything but title. The real kicker? Tonight was supposed to be my moment. I had prepared a full presentation to show our record-breaking quarterly performance. Instead, the staff meeting would now double as the announcement of Cameron's promotion. I could already hear my mother clinking glasses and calling it a fresh start. As I stood near the fireplace in the lobby, our longtime head of housekeeping, Maria, caught my eye. Her brows were drawn together, a silent question in her expression. She knew. Everyone who'd worked with me these past 8 months knew. And yet they were being asked to cheer for a man who'd barely shown up. I felt like I was watching someone else's victory party, one where I'd done all the work and wasn't invited to the podium. To understand how we got here, let me take you back. Sierra Crest Inn has been in our family since the early 1970s. My grandparents built it from the ground up, a rustic lodge nestled between the pines overlooking the lake. I spent my childhood checking in guests, folding laundry, and shadowing my father as he fixed leaky faucets. While other kids played video games, I was learning to balance a cash drawer and make towel animals. My younger brother Cameron, 3 years my junior, had zero interest in the hotel. He switched college majors like outfits, first architecture, then business, then dropped out entirely. He wanted to find himself, and my parents thought that was charming. Meanwhile, I was managing multi-million-dollar hotels across the Pacific Northwest. I built a career, but every call home ended the same way. "When are you moving back, Danielle?" Or, "Isn't it time you settled down?" When my father called last spring, desperation in his voice, I knew what I had to do. It broke my heart to see the inn in such disrepair. But I also saw potential, and I dove in. The first few weeks were damage control. The boiler broke, staff morale was abysmal, the books were a mess. I rolled up my sleeves and tackled it all. I launched a website with online booking. I updated the rooms with cozy linens, handcrafted decor, and energy-efficient lighting. I cut deals with ski tour companies for exclusive packages. I poured my soul into Sierra Crest. And where was Cameron, hosting happy hours in Tahoe City with his college buddies, and occasionally dropping by to suggest we install arcade games in the lobby? His version of leadership was ordering bar menus off Etsy and posting selfies by the fireplace. Still, my parents clung to this fantasy that he was the visionary while I was the worker bee. What really made my blood boil was the way they talked about him. Cameron's ideas are so modern, he just needs some time to grow into his role. Meanwhile, I was treated like the hired help. But I kept going. I told myself that once the numbers came in, they'd see the truth. They didn't. The last straw came just 3 days ago. I arrived early to prepare for the staff meeting, only to find Maria, who'd been at the inn for 15 years, in tears. Cameron had tried to fire her. His reason? She was too set in her ways. In reality, she had refused to implement his new rotating schedule, one that had housekeepers working 12-hour split shifts with no overtime. It would have left us completely understaffed on checkout days. I had to step in and reverse it, saving her job. For now. That was the moment I realized they weren't just blind. They had chosen to stay that way. And now, standing in this beautifully redone lobby, the one I'd given everything to, I felt the first spark of something I hadn't let myself feel in months. Anger, not just at them, but at myself. I had expected recognition, but you can't expect a thank you from people who only see you when you're useful. On the drive home that night, I passed a crumbling sign half buried in snow. For sale, Lakeside Lodge. It was once our biggest competitor, now just a shuttered shell. I pulled over and stared at it for a long time. And for the first time in months, I smiled. I sat in my car outside the shuttered Lakeside Lodge, staring at the faded for sale sign, half buried under a crust of snow. And for the first time in months, I wasn't angry. I was clear. The building looked tired, shingles missing, paint peeling, the parking lot cracked and overgrown. But I didn't see what it was. I saw what it could be. Lakeside Lodge used to be our biggest competitor back in the 90s. Better lake views, newer amenities, and a thriving spa center. But its owners had retired, and over time it had become just another forgotten property. A relic, clinging to the past, just like my family thought I was. I stayed in that car for nearly an hour, thinking about every single moment I'd been overlooked. Every family dinner where Cameron rambled on about his big ideas and our parents beamed at him. Every time I come home from college, full of excitement about my hospitality courses, only to hear, "That's nice, Danielle, but your brother might take over the inn one day." He didn't study hospitality. He didn't study anything. They always excused it. He's creative. He just needs space. He'll grow into his potential. But when I stayed late managing hotel launches, traveling city to city for client meetings, running entire teams, yes, that wasn't potential. That was just Danielle doing her job. No wonder they thought I'd be happy as their operations assistant. I was never meant to be the star, just the scaffolding propping up their golden boy. That night I called a real estate agent. The listing was still open, and the owners were eager to sell. I had the savings, the credit, and most importantly, the drive. If my family didn't want me to lead their legacy, fine. I'd build my own. The next morning, while Cameron was holding one of his strategic brainstorming breakfasts, basically just avocado toast and buzzwords, I was walking through the dusty halls of Lakeside Lodge. Clipboard in hand, taking notes. The layout was a dream. Double the spa space Sierra Crest had. Wraparound decks with uninterrupted lake views. More parking, a separate cottage that could be converted into a high-end honeymoon suite. The place needed a complete overhaul, but I'd renovated worse under tighter budgets. By the end of the week, the lodge was mine. I didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not Cameron, not even Maria, who by now had become more of a confidant than a colleague. I needed time to breathe, to plan, to dream, to finally build something that was mine from the ground up. I named it Solstice Ridge. A bit poetic? Maybe. But it felt right. A new beginning, a turning point. The name itself held the energy of change, of light breaking through the dark. I wanted anyone who stayed there to feel like they'd stepped into a place of renewal. It was everything I wanted Sierra Crest to be, but had been told wasn't realistic. I brought in a trusted contractor I'd worked with in Seattle, and together we mapped out a timeline. I pulled old vendor contacts, called in favors, and slowly began assembling a team. Many of them former employees from Sierra Crest who'd quietly reached out after being pushed out under Cameron's new efficiency initiatives. They weren't looking for revenge. Neither was I. We just wanted to build something that worked. Meanwhile, I kept up appearances at Sierra Crest. I didn't want to tip my hand too early, especially not to Cameron. He was already starting to spiral under the pressure of responsibilities he didn't understand. In his mind, leadership was about delegation and charisma. But hospitality is a business of service and detail. You don't just smile and wing it. The cracks started showing fast. Our breakfast service, the one I had revived with locally sourced ingredients and a warm, personal touch, was cut to save money. Reviews began to dip. Guests noticed the changes. Staff morale plummeted. Cameron introduced an app-based feedback system, but never responded to the complaints. I watched quietly as the very foundation I'd rebuilt began to crumble under his carelessness, but I didn't say a word. I focused on Solstice Ridge. Unlike Sierra Crest, where I had to fight tooth and nail to justify every dollar, here I had full creative control. The rooms would feature artisan woodwork from local craftspeople. The restaurant would serve farm-to-table cuisine, not frozen waffles and hotel coffee. I commissioned murals from Lake Tahoe artists, redesigned the lobby with soft stone, glass, and warm lighting. It would be sleek, modern, but rooted in its natural setting, a sanctuary, not just a stay. And the spa. Oh, the spa. Sierra Crest had always dismissed my proposals for a full-service wellness experience as too ambitious. At Solstice Ridge, I installed infrared saunas, mountain-inspired aromatherapy treatments, and an outdoor soaking tub with views of the lake. My dream. Finally real. Word started getting out quietly at first. A few whispers in town. An Instagram page I launched under a pseudonym. A travel blogger who I'd hosted in Seattle reposted my sneak peek renderings and guessed, correctly, that I was behind it. Some called me spiteful. Others said I was abandoning my family. But my phone kept ringing with messages from staff I'd trained at Sierra Crest, asking if I was hiring. One night, Maria pulled me aside in the Sierra Crest laundry room. "I heard a rumor," she said, her eyes twinkling. "You buying a place across the lake?" I raised an eyebrow. "That's so," she grinned. "If it's true, I'm available starting next month. Just say the word." I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. I wasn't doing this to hurt anyone. But, I wasn't going to shrink for anyone either. If my parents couldn't see my value, if they chose to give my title, my credit, my work to a man who hadn't earned it, then they'd get what they picked, and I'd build something better. Solstice Ridge would be my answer, and soon everyone would see it. It was hard to keep Solstice Ridge a secret for long. Between the construction trucks coming in and out, the contractors on site from sunrise to sundown, and the fact that the old Lakeside Lodge hadn't seen this much activity in years, the town was buzzing. I didn't confirm or deny anything, not to the curious neighbors, not to the local cafe owner, who leaned over the counter and said, "That new project across the lake got your touch, doesn't it?" "Why didn't it?" I just smiled and paid for my coffee. Let them wonder. Meanwhile, Sierra Crest Inn was cracking at the seams under Cameron's so-called leadership. Every day I reported for duty at the family hotel, and every day it felt less like a workplace and more like a hostage situation. Cameron had turned the lobby into a personal hangout, hosting entrepreneur meetups and scheduling staff meetings around his gym sessions. He spoke in vague jargon about vision realignment and monetizing guest flow, whatever that meant. Meanwhile, guests were checking out early, laundry was backed up, and online reviews were tanking. And the numbers? They told the real story. Occupancy was down, return bookings dropped 40%, and the staff turnover was climbing fast. But any time I brought data to the table, Cameron would brush it off. "You worry too much, Danielle. Guests come for the vibe, not for spreadsheets." That's the problem. He thought hotel management was a vibe. I focused on Solstice Ridge. My days were long. I'd work early shifts at Sierra Crest, and as soon as I clocked out, I'd head across the lake, throw on a hard hat, and walk the property. The transformation was staggering. We restructured the entire guest flow, expanded the lobby to include a reading nook with panoramic windows, installed a sunroom cafe overlooking the lake, built a private event terrace with ambient lighting that melted into the night sky. My vision was becoming real, one bolt and beam at a time. Every piece of furniture, every texture, every smell. I chose it. No compromises, no one to second-guess or undercut me. I named the Lakeview restaurant Emberstone, a nod to warmth, fire, and resilience. Guests would eat by firelight, drink wine sourced from regional vineyards, and enjoy dishes created by a chef I'd once mentored in Seattle. I had never felt so creatively alive. The staff came together like puzzle pieces. Maria came on board as director of housekeeping and brought 2 of her top employees from Sierra Crest with her. I hired a concierge from Napa Valley, a chef from a boutique lodge in Jackson Hole, and brought in my favorite massage therapist from Tahoe City. Everyone who joined was someone I trusted, or someone who believed in the mission, to offer excellence without arrogance, warmth without pretense. Meanwhile, Cameron's reign at Sierra Crest grew more chaotic by the week. One day, I overheard a guest at the front desk whisper, "Is the real manager around? That guy in the blazer just told me the pool was closed because he wasn't feeling the vibe today." I didn't even blink. Staff meetings devolved into Instagram strategy talks, while actual issues, a leaking boiler, a broken keycard system, were ignored. Maria had dodged a bullet. Every day I was more certain I'd made the right call by walking away. But of course, nothing stays quiet forever. Word of Solstice Ridge reached my family during a city planning meeting. The permits had gone public, and my name was on every one of them. My mother, Ellen, called first. "Danielle," she said, feigning composure, "I heard something disturbing. Are you starting a competing hotel?" "Not competing," I replied, "and just correcting a mistake." She was silent for a beat. "You're trying to hurt your brother?" "No," I said, evenly. "I'm just not letting him hurt me anymore." From that moment on, the gloves came off. My parents stopped inviting me to family dinners. They started pressuring vendors not to work with me. A few even dropped out, citing existing relationships with Sierra Crest. My father, Warren, called mutual contacts to dissuade them from partnering. I was quietly removed from the local tourism board. It stung, not because I needed their approval, but because I'd spent my entire life trying to earn it. Still, I didn't let it stop me. For every vendor that ghosted me, I found a new one in Sacramento or San Francisco. If the tourism board didn't want to include me, I worked directly with luxury travel agents and curated influencer stays. And the public? They were curious. The whispering turned into quiet anticipation. A few locals snuck peeks through the construction fences. Former guests from Sierra Crest, ones who'd written to compliment our past renovations, messaged me on LinkedIn asking when we'd open. 6 months after I bought the property, Solstice Ridge was ready. We didn't do a traditional ribbon cutting. That wasn't the tone I wanted. We hosted a soft opening with a local string quartet, past hors d'oeuvres, and champagne by the fire pits, a subtle, elegant affair. And it was packed. As I greeted guests that evening, I caught sight of my parents stepping into the lobby. My mother wore her best pearls and her tightest smile. My father looked around with wide, stunned eyes. Then came Cameron. His expression was less composed. He walked over and hissed through clenched teeth, "You're trying to destroy us. This is a direct attack on our family." I took a slow sip of champagne and smiled. "No, Cameron, this is me succeeding despite our family." The contrast between our hotels couldn't have been clearer. While Sierra Crest was battling mold in the spa locker rooms and cutting amenities to save cash, Solstice Ridge had already been featured in 2 design magazines. We were taking reservations through the summer. I didn't need their validation. The inn I'd dreamed of for years was no longer a dream. It was standing, radiant, full, alive. And the best part? I wasn't chasing a legacy anymore. I was creating one of my own. The success of Solstice Ridge came faster than even I expected. Within 3 weeks of opening, we were at 85% capacity. The reviews poured in, glowing, detailed, personal. Guests raved about everything from our heated floor tiles to the house-made rosemary scones. But with success came the shadows, whispers, sabotage, and the weight of small-town politics that suddenly remembered who I was. Sierra Crest, meanwhile, was falling apart. Guests complained about delayed check-ins, inconsistent service, and basic maintenance issues. Their TripAdvisor rating dropped from 4.5 to 3.2 in less than 3 months. The pool heater broke and wasn't fixed for weeks. Rooms sat uncleaned due to staff shortages. Cameron had replaced the front desk manager with one of his poker buddies who didn't know how to operate the reservation software. Still, my parents wouldn't admit anything was wrong. They acted like it was a rough patch, a patch that looked suspiciously like total collapse. I knew things were bad when one of the lodge's oldest guests, a retired school teacher named Janice, who'd stayed at Sierra Crest every summer for 20 years, called me. "I'm sorry, Danielle," she said gently, "but I won't be booking there again. The service just isn't what it used to be. I came by Solstice Ridge last week. Your team made me feel so welcome. I think I found a new tradition." She didn't say it, but I heard the truth in her voice. The inn I'd poured myself into had become unrecognizable, while the one they'd handed my brother was becoming the town's best-kept cautionary tale. Still, the rumors swirled. That I was tearing the Rhodes family apart, that I'd stolen staff, vendors, ideas. One day, I walked into my favorite cafe, and the barista, usually so friendly, barely made eye contact. I was no longer just Danielle the hotelier. I was the woman who turned her back on her family. But I kept showing up. I focused on the work. I focused on my people. We ran staff retreats in the off hours, built wellness packages, partnered with regional artists for rotating gallery walls in our main hallway. I brought in a yoga instructor every Thursday at sunrise. Solstice Ridge wasn't just a hotel. It was a destination. But the deeper truth, I wasn't just building a brand. I was building myself. A version of Danielle who didn't flinch under pressure, who didn't seek approval, who didn't ask permission. And then came the award season. The California Hospitality and Tourism Guild announced its nominations for Boutique Hotel of the Year. Solstice Ridge made the list, alongside some heavy hitters from Napa, Big Sur, and Palm Springs. Sierra Crest was not on the list. I wasn't surprised. The nomination alone brought another wave of attention: travel bloggers, industry reps. Former colleagues from Seattle who reached out with congratulations and a hint of envy. But for my family, it was salt in the wound. My mother, Ellen, called me out of the blue. "Congratulations," she said stiffly. "Your hotel's on the short list. Your father and I, we're proud, even if you chose to go your own way." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But it still felt hollow, especially when, the following week, I found out she'd called one of my suppliers, someone I'd worked with for years, and suggested he discontinue our contract to avoid tension with Sierra Crest. The supplier, thankfully, warned me. I switched vendors immediately, found a better deal. And for every attempt to undermine me, I grew sharper, quicker, more focused. Let them play games. I was playing for keeps. And then came the big night, the California Boutique Hotel Awards, hosted at a luxury ballroom in Sacramento. I sat at a round table with my team, Maria, our chef, our front desk lead, and 2 housekeepers who'd been with me since day one. The energy was electric. We were dressed to the nines, sipping champagne and sharing nervous jokes. Just before the ceremony started, I spotted my parents walk into the back of the room. They hadn't told me they were coming. I don't know what I expected. Maybe another guilt trip, maybe nothing at all. But I took a breath, steadied myself, and turned back to my team. When the announcer reached our category, Boutique Hotel of the Year, the entire room seemed to still. And the award goes to Solstice Ridge, Lake Tahoe. Applause, cheers. Maria let out a squeal. I stood stunned for half a second before walking to the stage, heels steady on the thick carpet, palms slightly damp. I looked out at the audience, my team beaming, my parents sitting frozen, and somewhere in the shadows, I wondered if Cameron had even bothered to show. I took the mic. "I'd like to thank my team, the soul behind every check-in and turn-down and warm smile. You've built something extraordinary with me. And to our guests who choose us, not just for luxury, but for comfort, for warmth, for heart, thank you." Then I paused, just long enough. "And lastly, I want to thank the place where I first fell in love with hospitality, Sierra Crest Inn. Though our paths have diverged, that's where it all began. Sometimes, when doors close, new visions are born." There were polite chuckles, 1 or 2 gasps. I walked off stage to a standing ovation. That night, a travel editor from a top luxury lifestyle magazine cornered me during cocktails. She wanted to do a full feature on Solstice Ridge. The transformation, the design, the story behind the story. As we talked, I noticed my parents hovering nearby, close enough to hear. I said it clearly without looking at them. Sometimes the best things we create come from being underestimated. The article came out a month later. The headline, "Solstice Ridge Rises. How a Forgotten Daughter Built California's Most Talked About Boutique Hotel." And on the second page, a sidebar titled, "Old Roots, New Problems. Why Family-Run Hotels Like Sierra Crest Are Struggling to Compete." It was brutal, honest, accurate, and it changed everything. The same people who whispered about me now sang a different tune. And my family? Well, they couldn't ignore me anymore. It was 3 weeks after the magazine article dropped, the one that compared Solstice Ridge's rise to Sierra Crest's collapse, when I got the invitation. A text from my mother. Dinner, just the 3 of us, Sunday, 6 p.m. No emojis, no pleasantries, just like her, short, polished, loaded. I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it, to pretend it hadn't arrived. But another part, The part that had spent years hoping for acknowledgement, for closure, knew I had to go. Not for them, for me. I didn't expect an apology, and I certainly didn't expect a thank you, but I wanted to hear what they had to say. Face to face, Sunday came fast. When I pulled into my parents' driveway in Tahoe Pines, the house looked the same as it always had. Warm lights in the windows, neat flower boxes, the same wind chimes that had been there since I was 12. But the air felt different. Heavy. Tense. Ellen greeted me at the door in her usual cashmere sweater, clutching a glass of Chardonnay. "Danielle," she said with a tight smile, "you look, professional." "Thanks," I replied, brushing the snow from my coat. "You look like you haven't slept in a week." Inside, the table was already set. 3 places, a roast in the oven, wine breathing in a decanter. It all felt rehearsed, choreographed, as if to suggest that everything was normal, but nothing about this was normal. Warren sat at the table, staring into his scotch, eyes lined and weary. He looked older than the last time I'd seen him. Maybe it was the stress. Maybe it was the shame. We made small talk for 10 minutes. The weather, the ski forecast, a brief mention of the wildfire threat down south. It was almost comical, the way they danced around the real reason I was there. Until finally my father cleared his throat. "We read the article," he said. "Congratulations. Solstice Ridge. It's really something." I nodded once. "Thank you." There was silence. Then Ellen leaned forward. "Danielle, your brother is struggling. The hotel is, well, it's not doing well. Guests are complaining. Staff keep leaving. The bank has called in their loan officer twice this month." She paused for effect. Then came the pitch. "We were hoping you'd consider helping him. Helping us. You know the systems better than anyone. Maybe you could guide Cameron. Show him how to turn things around." There it was. The olive branch, coated in desperation. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't laugh, even though part of me wanted to. I just folded my hands in my lap and said, "I offered to help a year ago. I gave up my life in Seattle, my career, my savings, and you gave the job to Cameron." Warren looked pained. "It was never about choosing sides, but it was," I said, cutting him off. "And now you want me to clean up a mess I warned you was coming?" Ellen looked like she wanted to argue. Her lips parted, then pressed together again. I saw it. The flicker of resistance, the old urge to guilt me into compliance. But I was no longer the woman who bent to earn their affection. "I'm not coming back," I said clearly. "I won't fix what Cameron broke." Silence. Then I added, "But if you want advice, I'll give it. Vendors, systems, training recommendations. That's it. My time belongs to Solstice Ridge now." Warren nodded slowly. "I understand." Ellen didn't speak. I stayed for dessert. A dry slice of apple pie and 30 more minutes of awkward small talk. Then I stood, gathered my coat, and left. Driving home, I felt light, not triumphant, not smug, just free. I had said no, not out of spite, but out of clarity. I had drawn the line that should have been drawn years ago, and with that boundary came something I hadn't felt in decades. Peace. Over the next few weeks, I felt the shift ripple through every part of my life. I stopped explaining myself to anyone, not to old friends who still asked, "Do you talk to your family?" Not to business contacts who suggested I extend an olive branch. I'd done that more than once, and I was done bleeding for people who refused to value me. I became more protective of my time, my energy. I invested more in the people who showed up. My team, my guests, the community we were building together. Solstice Ridge hit its highest occupancy rate yet. We were booked solid through spring. Requests for private events were flooding in. Retreats, weddings, corporate getaways. Even a film scout reached out, interested in using the lodge for an indie drama set in the mountains. And then the calls started coming from other boutique hotel owners. How did you pull it off? Can we bring you in as a consultant? You're running something special. Teach us. I didn't realize it at first, but I had become the very thing Sierra Crest refused to let me be, a leader. I heard through the grapevine that my parents had finally hired a professional consultant to help Sierra Crest. Cameron hadn't taken it well. He'd been avoiding industry events, calling them rigged popularity contests. He stopped posting to his so-called business blog, and as for our relationship, we didn't speak. And I was okay with that. I didn't need his apology. His bitterness was his to carry. Mine was gone. The lodge I'd dreamed of was thriving, not just the business, but the people. My staff who walked in smiling every morning, my guests who left glowing reviews and sent handwritten thank you cards. I'd built something with heart, something I could be proud of. And every time I walked through the lobby with the scent of cedarwood in the air and the soft hum of life unfolding around me, I knew I had finally chosen myself. The morning of the Regional Hospitality Excellence Awards, I stood in the lobby of Solstice Ridge, sipping my coffee and watching the sunrise pour golden light through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The stone fireplace crackled softly. A couple by the concierge desk laughed as they planned their snowshoe hike. Maria passed by, clipboard in hand, already preparing for an afternoon site visit from a travel agency. It was a moment of motion, of energy, of life, and it hit me how far I'd come, not just in square footage or online reviews, but in spirit. For years I had been chasing something. My family's respect, their validation, their love wrapped in a title or a nod of approval. I thought if I worked hard enough, made enough sacrifices, saved enough legacies, maybe I'd finally be seen. But I no longer needed to be seen by people who refused to open their eyes. Because now I was seen by the people who mattered, the ones I led, the ones I served, the ones I'd chosen as my new family. That night I arrived at the award ceremony in Sacramento with my team, Maria in emerald silk, our chef in a tailored navy suit, and our lead concierge in a sleek velvet dress. We looked like what we were, a powerhouse. As we sat at our table near the stage, a hush fell over the ballroom. The announcer read off the nominees for Boutique Hotel of the Year. I wasn't nervous. I didn't need the award to validate me. The truth was, I already had everything I wanted. Autonomy, community, pride. But when the announcer said the words, "and the award goes to Solstice Ridge," my heart still swelled. Applause erupted. Maria gripped my hand. Our table stood, and as I made my way to the stage, I saw them at the back of the room. Ellen and Warren Rhodes, my parents. My mother's eyes shimmered with tears she refused to shed. My father gave a small nod, tired, proud, maybe even a little ashamed. They hadn't been invited, but they had come anyway. I took the stage and accepted the award. "My name is Danielle Rhodes," I said, voice steady, heart full. "And I am honored, not just by this recognition, but by the journey that brought me here. This lodge was built with intention, resilience, and love. It's not just about walls and decor. It's about the people who make it come alive every day." I paused, then added, "Solstice Ridge wouldn't exist if not for every closed door, every overlooked idea, every time I was told I wasn't ready. Sometimes the hardest lessons come from the people closest to us. But those lessons shape who we become, and I chose to become someone who builds, even when the ground beneath her feet is shaking." The applause that followed wasn't just polite, it was personal. After the ceremony, my team and I celebrated in the lounge. Champagne flowed, photos were taken, and I basked in the joy of people who had believed in me before it was popular to do so. My parents didn't approach me, and I didn't go to them. This night belonged to the people who had helped me rise. 2 weeks later, the travel magazine that had interviewed me published a full spread. The headline read, "Reclaiming the Ridge: How Danielle Rhodes Built a New Gold Standard in Mountain Hospitality." Beneath it was a quote I had nearly forgotten saying, "Success isn't proving others wrong. It's proving to yourself that you are right to believe in what they couldn't see." It went viral, locally at least. Even some of the folks who had given me the cold shoulder began to thaw. A former tourism board member sent me a gift basket with a handwritten note. "We should have backed you sooner." But I didn't need their support anymore. What I needed, I already had. Solstice Ridge continued to thrive. We expanded into guided winter experiences and partnered with a nonprofit for mountain conservation. Guests started returning season after season, calling us their home in the hills. Industry leaders reached out for mentorship. We became not just a hotel, but a model. Cameron, I later heard, had stepped away from Sierra Crest's operations. Whether it was burnout or a quiet exit, no one could say for sure. A management firm had taken over. The lodge might survive, but it would never be the same, and that was okay. It wasn't mine to save anymore. My journey wasn't about fixing what others had broken. It was about building what only I could imagine. There were still moments, quiet nights when the wind howled against the glass and memories tried to creep back in, that I felt the old ache, the child in me who still longed for her parents' praise, the big sister who wondered if her brother ever really saw her. But those moments passed, and in their place came something deeper: pride, freedom, peace. I no longer lived in the shadow of my family's legacy, because I had created my own. When guests walk through our doors at Solstice Ridge, they don't see the woman who was passed over. They see the woman who rose, and that is more than enough.